In this short video, I'm going to show you a recipe for how to mix oil pastels for light and dark skin, and I'm also going to show you how you can apply that to drawing from a photograph. Hello and welcome back to Art Bites. In this tutorial I'm going to be working with this small pack of oil pastels. You can get larger packs with more colours in them, and these act like a bit of a shortcut. For example, this pack here has got a much wider range of pinks, so that might make it quicker to mix skin tones. So if you've got a bigger pack, then great, fantastic. If you've got a smaller pack, that's going to do just as well, because you can mix any skin tone with just a few colours. Now, all skin tones, whether they're light or dark, are made up of red and yellow. Now, if I'm working with lighter skin tones, I'm going to need a lot of white, unsurprisingly. This sort of creamy beige colour is also quite useful as an in-between colour when we're blending. You don't need this. If you've not got one of these in your pack, that's not a problem. I'm going to start with a thin layer of white. And then a thin layer of red. And then a thin layer of yellow. Might want a little bit more yellow than red. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to go over the top with the white, which I'm going to use to push the colours around on the paper to mix them together. So I'm going to use this sort of swirling motion to try and mix the colours together. Now, for me, that's a little bit too light still, so I think I'm going to go in with that beige colour as my kind of shortcut again. And that might be a little bit too yellowish, so I might add a little bit more red at the top. See what happens. And I'm then going to use that white again to kind of just gently blend that in. Yeah, that was too much red. As we get down into the bottom, we'll be able to blend that through. So if I've added too much red, I can just add a bit more yellow to balance it out. You'll notice I've got these little bits, and I can just pick those up with my pastel and wipe them off. Yeah. Perfect. Right, so that's my light skin tone. Okay, for my dark skin tone, dark skin is very similar. So instead of white, I'll start with this sort of rusty brown colour from my pack. So just like with the light skin tone, I'm going to put a sort of layer of that down first. And I'm then going to come in with my red and my yellow. And I'm then going to blend that together with that brown. I think there's a little bit too much red in this at the moment by the looks of it. So I might add a touch more yellow to that. There we go. Now, to lighten up the light skin, I'd obviously add some white. If I wanted to lighten up this darker skin tone, I could work with white, but personally I find that beige I mentioned earlier works a little bit better. Now you can see here that this is starting to get quite thick. So what I can do, I can get sort of a hard object, so something like a lollipop stick or an old ruler is quite useful. Don't use your mum's best cutlery. And I can just use that to scrape off the top layer of the oil pastel. You can see it coming off there. And I can then go in with my other colours just there. I can blend those together. Now, if I wanted to go for shadows with my light skin tone, a blue is quite a nice option, as is that rusty sort of reddish colour. Personally, I prefer the blue. It's what I'd use when I'd be painting. The blue in this pack's quite strong, so I'm putting that down very gently, knowing that I'm then going to come back over the top with my reds and my yellows to try and blend that colour in. And it will give me this sort of quite useful, might even come on with some of that beige, this useful kind of greyish colour, which is actually the kind of colour you get in your shadows quite a lot with skin. I might even come with the edges. I'm avoiding black here because I'm using a lot of white. If I use black, I'll get a really unnatural grey, which you'll see if you do something digital, but you wouldn't see in real life very much at all. Now, with my darker skin tone, I could go in with my blue, but actually the black will work slightly better for this. Again, I'd use that other colour that I've got to then blend that and mix that in. And that's how I'd get my sort of overall colours. So in the context of a face, where would I start? Well, I'd start looking at the lighter areas of the face and where the darker areas of the face were. So that would be where I'd add more white, or where I'd perhaps add more of my blues or my dark browns. So I'm going to give you a quick example here. So I'd start off by working with my white to sort of lay down areas that I know are going to be lighter. This makes sure that these stay lighter when I'm adding my colours later on. I might then also start to look for areas that are perhaps slightly pinker than other areas of the skin, and I'd lay those down with a layer of red. And then after that, I'd go over areas that are slightly yellower. And I'd start to then layer those colours up on top of each other. Because remember, we need to make sure we've got red and yellow in our mix. I'm also at this stage going to come in with that beige colour, because again, it's quite a nice in-between colour and it helps to kind of bind the colours together. I could also start to, at this stage, lay in some of my shadow colours. And I then can go in, like we did before, with that white and blend all of those colours together. Now I won't stop at this stage, I'll then go back in and I'll start to edit the colours, so I can see some of these colours aren't quite right yet. So for example, I can see here that I didn't use quite enough red in this area, so I'm going to lay down that red and then blend it back in again. Notice how I'm swapping between my colours all the time. I'm never laying down just one colour and then leaving it. I'm always blending it back in with another colour. Notice I'm doing the same again with the blue, which I mentioned earlier, and making sure I've blended that in so that it doesn't stand out as harshly. Skipping ahead just a little bit now, you may remember earlier I mentioned that I want to try and avoid using black when I'm working with light skin tones. There is a small exception to this. Some areas of the face, more specifically the nostrils, will have this really, really dark tone in them. So that's one of the few places that I'll use black, and you'll notice that I'm trying really hard to make sure that I don't use it very much, and I'm then blending that very quickly out into my sort of rusty brown and my blues. Okay then, I'll see you in my next video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button before you go, and as always, thanks for watching.